Hey guys, and welcome back to the Hewlett-Packard 8568B project. To catch you up, in case you didn't watch previous segments, I got these two units off of eBay separately but from the same seller without the cables. In other words, these weren't a matched unit. But I bought them both, taking a gamble that they would work, and I picked up the cables, and in the last installment we hooked everything up and powered it up. And at first we got nothing other than a few lights. The buttons weren't responding and the display was blank. But it was a little bit of trial and error and luck. I did get something on the display, but I have to power it up in a specific sequence. If I let this sit plugged in, powered in standby mode for more than, say, 15, 20, 30 seconds, when I turn it on, the display doesn't come up. But if I power cycle this in a certain way, the display does come alive. Now, the curious thing when we left off was we discovered that the XYZ outputs on the back did always have an active signal on them, even when this display was blank. And when this display was working, those signals looked to be the same. So I hooked them up to an external XY monitor, and it was a jumbled mess, even when this looked correct. Which is bizarre because those signals are supposed to be exactly the same signals that are going to this display. The idea is you can hook up an external monitor and you can hook up a plotter to it. So, before I was using a WaveTech 1901, which just has an X and a Y input. This has four outputs. X, Y to move the beam left, right, up, down, but also Z to modulate the intensity, and the fourth one is blanking to completely cut it off. So I'm going to try using a Tektronix 604, which has X, Y, and Z. No blanking, but at least we can modulate the brightness. So let's try powering this guy up. Because if we still see a jumbled mess here, but this screen has very nicely rendered info on it, then there's something very wrong somewhere. Maybe there's buffer ramps between the signals that go to this and the signals that go to the output. Very strange. Okay, right away. Yes, we have something on this. Huh. Kind of collapsed on me. This unit, I think, could use some servicing. But, yeah, so nothing on here. It seems, if I can get this thing to cooperate. Focus is terrible. Yeah. This definitely needs some servicing. When it cooperates, yeah, there we go. So that, it's off center, but that is what we should be seeing here. It's so weird that on the WaveTech, this just looks like absolute garbage, but on this, albeit out of focus, yeah, it's there. Also bought this unit used on eBay and haven't done any servicing to it. Looks like it needs a little bit of help, but okay, so we're verifying that even when this display is blank, the unit is alive and it is putting out info. Which leads us to the other big problems, is these buttons aren't doing anything on either unit except for this one. The green one, which like resets the thing. And then it does a self-power test, and there's two red LEDs down here. And if these go out, supposedly it passed the basic internal self-test. But can't do anything on either unit. Alright, so the next thing I wanted to do is I've seen this advice again and again from people who have worked on this specific model, but also other Hewlett-Packard stuff from this era, is to reseat the cards. But before we did that, I did some more fiddling around and I got both displays to come up at the same time. And I got this a bit better centered and focused. So, interesting. So let me turn this off. I'll turn it back on. So, see, right away, displaying the Tektronix. This guy, I think what's happening is it's not coming out of standby mode. Because I checked the voltages on this, and there's no high voltages. There's just nothing going on with them going to the CRT. But it is alive, it is active, it is putting out valid signals. Alright, I got the cover off the bottom unit, got them hooked together on their sides, got it powered up. So, I did reseat these two cards. One is the processor board, and the one's communications or something like that. Didn't seem to make any difference. We do have some error lights. 249 megahertz unlocked. High filter or something. And that one I can't really read. I think these are all issues with the PLLs and the VCOs and stuff like that. Nothing to do with the control panels not working. Also have a bunch of yellow lights down here, which I think are power supply indicators. So we got yellow on minus 15, minus 5, plus 5, plus 15, plus 20. And this one says low. And we got test points here, so we've got the multimeter out, we're going to check that. And notice there's also a yellow light over here that says stop. And some test points next to it, sweep, sweep left. STPs, some trimmers, got a whole bunch of stuff going on down in here. So I'll check the power supply. And if there's an issue with that, there are a couple boards there that could be reseated, or of course, pull them out for servicing if we need to. Well, all the voltages checked that on. So these yellow lights must mean that those supply rails are good. Also, the 15 or so red LED, diagnostic LEDs on the processor board are all off. So we got no information there. When I cycle it, they do flash red for a moment and then they all go out right away. Power cycle it again here. So the red LEDs came on, then they went out. Status LEDs are exactly the same as before. And now we're not going to get the display lit up, because that's what happens when I leave this on for a while. I need to completely disconnect it from power and bring it back up to have any hope of this display kicking in. So, so I took reference photos, I took notes, of course I had this video. So now I'm going to dive back into the service manual and see these lights. I seriously doubt that these are going to lead us into like why the controls don't work or the display doesn't work, because these have to do with tuning the VCOs and PLLs and stuff like that. But the yellow light down here might mean something. Or there are dip switches on this board. I think there might be some jumpers, and maybe even though I can't use the front panel controls, maybe I can get into some diagnostic tests. I don't know. Otherwise, yeah, I can reseat this board. That's power supply board. Power supply is good, but we do have this guy. Now, one interesting thing about these units is you saw me working on my 8662 or 8664, which also has all these interconnect RF little SMA type connectors. Those are all screw on, and I had to get a little tiny wrench 5/16 inch to get in there and undo the nuts and that. These are all push on, so much easier to take them on and off. You just wiggle them a little bit and they come out like so. So if I disconnect this one and this guy, and I'm going to take this plexiglass panel off, I can take this board out, take a look at it, reseat it. It's worth a shot. That's a rather impressive looking board, I think. This is frequency control. It looks, I'm guessing it's mixed signal, something like that. It's all house numbered chips, but the ceramic ones with gold lids seem to me that they're analog, perhaps ECL, because there is a minus 5 volt bus, and I imagine there's some ECL logic in here somewhere. A bunch of national semiconductor chips. There is 174 LS13 and LS00 down here, so we do have some TTL logic chips on this. Anyways, visual inspection looks fine. I'll reseat it, put the connectors back on, and see if it made any difference. Alright. Finally might have a glimmer of an insight into what's going on. First off, there are like 2 screws holding this front on. Somebody was in here checking this out. Now, I took a look in there. I didn't see anything obviously wrong with it. There's a ribbon cable going to it. There's a switch matrix in there. I reseated the connector. It made no difference. Got a whole bunch of RF goodness down here. We're not going to mess with that. Didn't see anything obviously wrong, but it's a pretty good indicator that somebody took a peek in there to see if they could resolve the issue. Now, at work today, I spent some time going through the service manual, which you can download from, I think it's HP Archive or something like that. I think Agilent hosts it these days, where they actually have archived documents for stuff like this. And they combine volume 1 and 2, and they have the whole thing scanned and readily available to download. It's about 600 pages. I quickly realized it's a pain to go through. The scan quality is pretty good, but some of the diagrams are oriented 90 degrees different from the text, so you have to kind of rotate back and forth, zoom in and out. It got to be a pain quickly, so I hopped onto eBay and I found Volume 1, which covers this. So Volume 1 covers this, Volume 2 covers a display unit, and I ordered a copy, an original copy, which has tabs for each one of these modules, so you can quickly jump to it. And I think that will be a great help. Now, the other interesting thing about HP stuff from this era is they had like 3 levels of diagnostic techniques to go through. One is to turn it on and look at the status LEDs. So we got the 2 on the front, and if either one of them stayed on, they say to check this stuff. There are, I think it's 12 red LEDs on this board we're going to take a closer look at in a moment. So and then the status lights on these various modules. Okay, so there's that. In level 2, they talk about a special type of meter that I'd never heard of and never saw before. But Hewlett-Packard made a special meter for servicing Hewlett-Packard equipment. And it didn't make much sense to me at first. It's a multimeter, but it has a special pod on it. It looks kind of like something to be like a logic analyzer probe. What it turns out is you can put this into certain modes. You can do jumpers on these headers here, dip switches, and it'll put the CPU in an endless loop that exercises certain lines, which you can then attach that probe to and compare the reading to what they show in a flow chart. Or we'll take a closer look when I get the service manual. I don't have one of those meters. I don't know that I want to invest a few $100 to get one, but that's what they recommend you do. And level 3 is get the extender cards, so you can have these out, extender boards rather, and break out your scope and start probing waveforms and voltages at a myriad of test points. Alright, let's get back to this board and these status lights. They're kind of hard to see. They're down here behind this ribbon cable. There's a whole row of red LEDs. One on the edge of this board. This is the processor board. The 68000's on here, and we got the EEPROMs and the RAM chips right in this area. So, with status lights on the front, the red LEDs went off, which is great. And then if these go out, that's good too. And if any of them stay on, you got a whole chart about things to check. But I noted that they all went out simultaneously and fairly quickly. It turns out that's not supposed to be that's not what is supposed to happen. It's supposed to be running tests and they go out sequentially. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't know how long it takes exactly, but long enough that you should see them going out one by one. And it said if they don't, there's finally a glimmer, first glimmer I saw in the service info that described something like what I was seeing. It said, hey, if all the status lights go off at once, you probably have a bad counter timer peripheral chip on here. And hey, guess what that chip connects to? Yes, the controls on the front, as well as a myriad of other things in this. It's the main control part. I think it's a 68230, 68230 is the part number. We'll take a look at that in a moment. I'm going to pull the board back out, which I can get a replacement for. It's not socketed, so I'll have to break out my Hacko desoldering gun. If I have to take it out, I figure I'll put it's a 48-pin chip, so it's a pretty hefty guy, and I'll put a socket in there and then get an order up a new chip and pop it in, and we'll see if that helps. But that finally something in the service info that matches what I'm seeing and makes sense if that's the problem. Right now, let's watch those status lights and see what I mean. So we're in standby mode, so when I turn this on and dim the lights, you're going to see those red LEDs go on and then go off all at the same time. Or pretty darn quickly. See, that's the rub. I thought they went off simultaneously. It's not quite simultaneously, but it's pretty quickly. And actually I can leave this on and just hit the reset button. So that green button on the front is the only button that does anything. Is basically, it's power cycle. It's resetting the processor. So I'm going to push it now. Nuts. I thought they were all going off simultaneously. They're not quite. Oh, man. Geez, there's a few videos of people working on these on YouTube. I'm going to take a look and see if I can find one from somebody that has the power cycles this on camera, so I can see how long it was supposed to be on. That still seems pretty quick. So I'm comparing those to those two LEDs on the front. And yeah, the red LEDs in the front go off shortly after these do. I still got a feeling it should be taking longer than that. So what I'm going to do next is pull that board out, and I figured I'd examine that chip really closely, all 48 pins, maybe reflow them, see if there's any cold joints or something like that. There is another test you can do, but it's destructive. You can rig up a jumper that does an extended power cycle check. They say it's a last resort if you get things kind of in the state I'm in and you got nothing else to lose. It will read or write and read back every memory location of the entire static RAM. Now there's a battery on there, it's battery backup. I think if you do that, you have to recalibrate it, which is not trivial. It needs specialized equipment. Now, I don't know if the battery on it is still good. It's not a rechargeable. I didn't realize that. It's a lithium battery, but it's an early kind of weird type. I think they call it a lithanol, or I forget the exact name of it. And they say it's good for at least 3 years. Well, this thing is more than, 40 years old? Or about, no, slightly 38 years old or so. In 87. So, I'm pretty sure that battery's not good anymore. In which case, the static RAM issue might not be valid anymore. But I'm not sure what you're supposed to jump out to do that. But regardless, I'm pretty sure even if the battery was dead and the static RAM contents were gone, it should still boot up and do the power test, and the controls should work. So I'm going to pull that out. Now, I should mention too, the Vintage Computer Fest Midwest is this upcoming weekend. So there's a chance I might be able to find one of these chips there. Otherwise, I've seen a few online. Prices are all over the place, from $8 each to... actually, one place was selling, I think, 8 for $8. And then ones in China that are upwards of $50 a pop for the ceramic version. But at Jamico Electronics, a fellow vintage electronics enthusiast on my Patreon tipped me off. The Jamico Electronics, surplus electronics site that I ordered from back in the day in the 80s, has a bunch, so I can order one from them. But the socket, that's a little bit trickier. If I want to get a nice machine, gold-plated, like one made by Auget, I have to pay a few bucks. Anyways, let me get that board back out so get a closer look at it. Alright, just about got the board out. Get this ribbon cable off here. If any of you are getting a little impatient and want me to just get on with it, a few things to keep in mind. This thing is insanely complicated. It's the most complicated thing I've ever worked on. And parts are expensive if you can get them at all. I looked online to see if I could just get a whole new board. There aren't any available. So yeah, I'm going to take my time. So there's the chip. There's the MC68230L8. It looks like a 40-pin chip, but I do believe it's 48. And that would be a 40 there. So TMS 9914, that's the GPIB chip. And that's not obvious, but that's a 68,000 processor. And there's that battery. Inorganic. TL5104. So curious mark. Replacing one of these. So it's a lithinyl. I don't know. Anyways, so that is the chip. It may be an issue. Not a whole lot on this. So we got 4 EEPROMs, and yeah, I should get an EEPROM reader and copy those out. I can also pop them out and reseat them. We got 4, these are 8K by 8 static RAM chips. We have 2 PALs, and that's a little scary too. It's these 2 guys. So that's something else. They say, well, if your board's acting weird, you should probably go ahead and replace those 2. Replace them with a what? Those are programmable gate array chips. Completely custom. Unless you can read one out, you can't buy these. Unless maybe somebody has cloned these or knows or can burn a new one for you. Yeah, I don't know. And then yeah, we got some dip switches here. We got some headers here, or test points. So that's one thing you can do. So if you they make these extender things, so you can have the board out like this, but still hooked up, and then you can probe to your heart's content. Otherwise, I read people have attached thin little wires to key points, and then put the card fully seated, and then hooked up a scope. Just basically to see it like is a clock running on the CPU. Is there activity on the address and data lines? But let's do a couple things. Let's reseat this and take a really close look at this chip. These boards are very well made. There's no obvious signs of any deterioration or cracking or cold joints or bad solder flow or anything like that. Let's see these. Double-sided with a ground plane, so not the easiest thing to work on. Hopefully, if I have to take that chip out, the Hacko will help me out there. No signs of any bodges or reworks or anything's ever been replaced. It's probably a virgin, never been taken out since this thing was made. Alright, let's see what I can do. Okay, EEPROM's reseated. Every pin on that chip reflowed. Won't make a damn bit of difference. Don't think so. I don't think so. These LEDs are still turning off, and again, they're not all turning off at once, but pretty quickly. So I was thinking, hey, maybe I can find somebody else on YouTube. If I get really lucky, working on the same unit, shows this and shows when it's working, and I can see how those LEDs are supposed to look. I came really close. Seems there's basically 3 of us on YouTube that muck around with stuff like this, and we've kind of been following each other's footsteps, which is Curious Mark, myself, and I believe it's Simon Spears. I think he's in Australia, where we've each worked on an HP 8662A, and I think some same multimeters and scopes, and we've all tackled one of these now. So he has a unit that has such similar problems to mine, where the control panel's not doing anything, and even when the display, when it comes up, it's not showing an active signal on it. But he had one LED stuck on. He was going through exactly the same section, the service info, when he was checking out the same chips that I was, and he popped the EPROMs out and read them, and he went so far as to, I believe he said he bought 2 more of these boards, and it made no difference. I was yelling at my computer because he was showing these status LEDs clear as day, and he was talking about, oh, well, if I reset it, the lights light up and then they go out sequentially. But he didn't show it on film. He didn't push the green button. It was like, oh, come on, man. But he did solve his problem, and it wasn't this board. It was the other board, which I have looked at, and he had too. And there's not so much going on with it, so I just looked at it and put it back in, didn't think much about it. But on his unit, at least, there's one socketed chip on it. I think this is just glue logic. There's no CPU, there's no memory chips or anything like that. But he just took the chip out and reseated it, and it fixed his interface problem. So we're going to try that. And even if it doesn't for me, maybe this is the board that I need to work on or replace. I think these are all house-numbered chips. Both the card things were gone when I got this, so I gotta struggle a little bit to get it out. There we go. No ribbon cables, nothing. Real easy to come out. Yeah, this guy. He reseated that chip and it fixed his problem. Okay, a few chips are not house-numbered. So we got an LS30. I think that's an 8-input NAND gate or something. Man, I used to know all these LS chips by heart. Okay, an LS74, that's a dual flip-flop. A bunch of those. An 86, I think that's an exclusive OR gate. About half of these are not house-numbered, but I wouldn't be sure these are just all 74 LS series logic. Some LS51s, LS04s, LS367s. But the one chip he took out that he reseated, it is house-numbered. But what the hell? Let's take it out and put it back in. If that solves my problem, how crazy is that? Two of us crazy people trying to get one of these to work. Exactly the same problem and exactly the same thing fixed it. Also annoying in the service info, they don't mention that this could be a problem. I don't even remember seeing this in the service info, to be honest. It's the RF section interface, the A12 board. Don't see any obvious issues with it. Alright, let's give it a try. Alright, been reseated. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention something else. So in the earlier video I mentioned about there being an internal external reference oscillator switch on the back of this, and I played it around with it both positions. He realized why he didn't have a live display or why it wasn't sweeping. There is no internal oscillator. You have to use an external oscillator. The internal oscillator would go right here. I thought this was for a high-grade one, but without this, at least there was another one somewhere in it, but I don't think there is. Now, the cool thing is, he bought one, and he showed how to install it. And there are a number of them on eBay. Not necessarily cheap. They're oven-controlled 10 megahertz oscillators, and they install right here on these rubber mounts. I've seen prices ranging from like 60 to 150 bucks thereabouts, but if I get the whole thing working, I'm willing to invest that money just to finish this off. Otherwise, I could feed a 10 megahertz signal into the back from one of my other pieces of test equipment just to see if it worked. But obviously not a permanent solution. Alright. So standby mode, full power mode. Not looking good because the same two lights that are always stuck on this guy are stuck. Just don't do anything. That was a long shot. And one of these buttons. Nope. I'm watching the LED sequencing again. I'll show you guys that again. So they all come on, and the one furthest away seems to go out first, and then a group of them towards you guys, and then the rest of them. I have no idea if that's right or not. That's what I want to know. So if any of you out there have one of these and have seen this on a working unit, I'd love to know, is that right or not?